There have been 7 major terrorist attacks on American soil since Barack Obama was sworn into office. 7. All deadly. But you wouldn't know that watching and listening to the mainstream media, would you? You wouldn't know that from this president and his sycophants. Among the attacks under Obama, June 2009, Little Rock, Arkansas, some terrorist named Mohammed opened fire on a U.S. military recruiting office. Later that year, Army Major Hassan murdered 13 at Fort Hood. In 2013, there was the Boston Marathon bombing. This year, another military recruit depot in Tennessee attacked. And of course, San Bernardino, California. All Muslim attackers, all striking soft targets, all radical Islamist terrorists who are allowed in our country out of either the goodness of our hearts or because too many of us have become so politically correct that it is killing us, literally. And Barack Obama has made things worse, more dangerous, more deadly, including making it easier for terrorists like Tashfeen Malik to enter our country using K-1 marriage visas. And now, the Obama remedy, he wants to go after us, our firearms, our Second Amendment rights.
It is entirely possible that these 2 attackers were radicalized to commit this act of terror.
Stop the tape. What a bizarre thing to say from a president. Just days after a terrorist attack, of course they were radicalized. Who cares how and when they were radicalized? Of course they're radical Islamists, Mr. President. Roll tape.
So it would underscore a threat we've been focused on for years. The danger of people succumbing to violent extremist ideologies.
Stop the tape. Listen to the words that he used. Succumbing to violent extremism. No, it's not succumbing, Mr. President. It's a choice. Just like you Democrats say abortion is a choice. It is a choice that they make. And they are trying to kill us. And they are not violent extremists. They're radical Islamists. You can say it. Roll tape.
We know that ISIL and other terrorist groups are actively encouraging people around the world and in our country to commit terrible acts of violence, oftentimes as lone wolf actors.
Stop the tape. You know, he's promoting that a lot about the lone wolf because he's trying to downplay the threat. But the lone wolves are just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than the 19 hijackers that flew jets into our facilities on September 11th, 2001. They are dangerous, and they want to try and kill us and take over our country and end our way of life. Lone wolf or big organization, doesn't matter. Roll tape.
And even as we work to prevent attacks, all of us, government, law enforcement, communities, faith leaders, need to work together to prevent people from falling victim to these hateful ideologies.
Stop the tape. Falling victim. No, Mr. President, once again, you're wrong. The victims were on the ground in San Bernardino on December 2nd, 2015. 14 of them dead. Dozens wounded. Those were the victims, Mr. President. 130 people slaughtered in Paris. Those were the victims, Mr. President. Roll tape.
More broadly, this tragedy reminds us of our obligation to do everything in our power together to keep our communities safe.
Stop the tape. I'll tell you what I'm doing in my power to keep my community safe. I'm loading and locking. Roll tape.
We know that the killers in San Bernardino used military-style assault weapons, weapons of war, to kill as many people as they could.
Stop the tape. This is the ignorance of this man just beaming through. Those weapons of war, first of all, they're not weapons of war. We can't purchase legally weapons of war without jumping through some huge hoops in this country. These are firearms. They are what differentiate this country, Mr. Obama, from Mexico, a very corrupt government. We have a quasi-corrupt government, and the only difference between the two countries is the Second Amendment. So, Barack Obama wants to make it harder to buy firearms in this country. And he's using this horrible terrorist attack in California by Muslim invaders to assault our constitutional rights. So what is it going to take? What is it going to take for liberals, a.k.a. people who support this man, to see that he is not driven by what is best for this country? He is driven by his radical agenda, which is driven by his radical ideology. And this radical ideology runs completely counter to our civil society, our laws, our Constitution, and to our Judeo-Christian heritage. Coming up next, another Team Obama land grab in the Lone Star States as the Daily Ledger continues.
Today on Tipping Point is a former